couple of weeks ago, Pimax sent me here the Crystal Super headset, and after quite a number of hours of trying it tonight, as you can tell from my hair, this is a really cool headset that I want to tell you more about. Now, if you're a viewer of this channel, you know that a couple months ago, Pimax also sent me the Crystal Lite to test out, and the Crystal Lite is basically an entry-level headset. It's the cheapest one that Pimax has to offer, yet for its price, it boasts really cool features. In particular, how the colors are displayed compared to other entry-level headsets, and in particular, the resolution is really impressive when I first tried it out. I'm obviously speaking to you from a very privileged position as being an affiliate of Pimax and getting to try out these really cool headsets, but thinking as like if I was a consumer, I felt pretty happy with the Pimax Crystal Lite. If this is something I'd have to purchase, I'd be pretty happy with the purchase in terms of what I get with my money, right? I looked at the other headsets and, again, thinking of the mind of a consumer, would this be a step up that I would want to take? And I'm very fortunate that Pimax is, letting me try this out to get a taste of it and see, is the step up worth it? And overall, in terms of like the features it provides, it is something you would want to seriously consider if you want to upgrade or if you have the money to jump in and get something really, really good at first. So I will be reviewing this headset for you. A couple of things we'll go over include just some basic comparisons to the Pimax Crystal Lite. We won't get too in depth, but just kind of take a look at the specs between the two, some of the features that this has, which have been really helpful in terms of just using it daily. And we'll also talk about some of the features it provides for game iRacing, which most of you know, it's the game I primarily play. And one of the features of the Pimax Crystal Super is eye tracking. Now, a lot of games actually don't support it, but as of the latest iRacing build just a couple of weeks ago, iRacing now supports eye tracking. I'll talk about what exactly that means in terms of performance. So before we go any further, I do once again want just to say thank you to Pimax for again entrusting this to me, lending to me, letting me review it and try it out, and having a lot of fun with it. It's been a superb headset. And again, for full disclosure, I'm a Pimax affiliate. This has been provided for me by free, and with the purchase of this with a code, I do earn a commission. Before we go any further, I also want to tell you that there is a flash sale this weekend. So roughly 2 days from the release of this video, so September 27th, there's a flash sale that will be happening on Saturday from 5 to 11 p.m. UTC, and the time conversion I'll have down below, if you use the promo code TEAMI5G10. So with that out of the way, let's get started and talk about this headset. So now here I have the two Pimax headsets that I have, and if I hold them up together here, obviously on my right hand here, the Pimax Crystal Lite, and on my left hand, the Pimax Super. And as you can see, the front faceplate of the Crystal Lite is significantly larger than that of the Crystal Super. In terms of the weight, the Pimax Crystal Lite is about the same weight as the Pimax Crystal Super, but the Pimax Crystal Super is lighter. It is, in terms of like actual wear and use and having it on my head, it's not like quite as noticeable as it was with the Pimax Crystal Lite. In particular, there's three standout features for the Crystal Super that the Crystal Lite does not have. One, the most obvious is yes, this is a higher resolution, but in terms of like setting it up and daily use, every time you put on the Crystal Super, you get the screen that tells you measuring your IPD, which IPD stands for interpupillary distance, which is something that's really important when you measure for glasses, for example, but especially important for VR headsets because if this is off, right, it's like having glasses that don't match, right? You're going to see blurry, or it's eventually going to hurt your eyes because your eyes are in effect not in focus. So the Crystal Lite did not have that, so I had to like take a ruler up to my bathroom mirror and trying to mark and see what my IPD was. And I think it was right. I don't know for sure. My eyes didn't hurt after using the Pimax Crystal Lite, so I must have been pretty close. But this will measure it every single time. So maybe your headset's on slightly different compared to the previous time you use it. Doesn't matter. The Crystal Super will automatically measure it for you and calibrate it. The Pimax Crystal Super has three different options when it comes to pixel density and field of view. There's the Crystal Super 50 ppd or 57 ppd, and then there's the Crystal Super Ultra Wide. for the 50 ppd and the 57 ppd. Whichever the two you choose, most of the features are largely the same. They both have, of course, the 4K resolution per eye, or effectively 4K at 3840 by 3840 pixels. Both have glassospheric lenses with a large sweet spot, and the 57 ppd has a 106 degree horizontal field of view, while the 50 ppd has 127 degrees of horizontal field of view, or 138 degrees in lapse mode. In terms of the refresh rate you can pick, there's 72 Hz and 90 Hz. The IPD, as I mentioned, is automatically adjustable between 58 and 72 millimeters. There's local dimming, and there's foveate rendering. It also, of course, comes with two controllers and effectively has internal tracking, or there's also lighthouse tracking that you can add on. Having effectively 4K resolution makes looking through this thing absolutely stunning. When I kind of first put it on and got it dialed in terms of the Pimax Crystal Light, there is very much a difference. It's not a massive difference, but a difference nonetheless. I should make mention that if you are using this headset as an audio device, so like a standalone audio device, and you're not like connected to a mixer like I am, you can control everything through the headset. So instead of having like fumble through windows and lowering volume here, you can just click these buttons, and again, you can raise and lower the volume on your headset. Included as well is a microphone and these speakers on, of course, the left and the right side. Now, there's an optional upgrade for the speakers, of which came with mine, so I was able to try out the ones that had better audio quality, and using these by itself, they did sound really good. Now, I prefer to use my earbuds, again, because when I stream, I do content, everything is going through my mixer, and it's sometimes maybe a bit of a headache if I want to try and route this audio to my mixer or get it out the stream. So I don't use this too much. Like if I had like a friends over, we're just trying out the headset, right? Then we wouldn't do all the fancy stuff. We would just go through the audio here on the headset. But again, the audio is acceptable and really good. And here's the controller. Again, pretty standard controller. It's the same that they use for the Pimax Crystal Lights. The controllers and tracking is acceptable. It's not the greatest, but to be honest, if you're buying a Pimax, you're probably buying it for Sims and probably not for something like Beat Saber. Though you can play Beat Saber with this, right? But Pimax is very clearly, in terms of their marketing and who they market to, it is for people like me who play mostly Sims. So this is not something I'd buy like for kind of controller style games. It's acceptable. I would not call it bad, but as you can see, I still have like the plastic film here. It shows you how much I've used the controllers in particular. Now, the total price for the Pimax Crystal Super is $1,735 US. Now, naturally, when you hear that price point, you are probably going to be taken aback, and it is understandable. But again, you have to keep in mind with the Pimax Crystal Super, this is not an entry-level headset. More than likely, if you are watching this video, you probably have tried VR before, or at least have an interest in it, of getting something like really, really good to kind of future-proof yourself, which if you have the budget and are able to buy this, you will do so, right? Like having a 4K resolution headset you'll be set for like the foreseeable future, the next 4 to 5 years, perhaps. So that kind of brings me to my next point, which is your computer specs, right? So I have a pretty decent computer. It's not technically like top of the line, as we'll talk about, but it's a very good PC. Like I can run triple screens on it, and I can run the Crystal Super. There's some things I have to do, and we'll talk about settings in a little bit, but I have a 9800X3D as my CPU, so a very good CPU. My GPU is a 4070, which is good, but not the greatest, right? Now, in terms of like what Pimax recommends, Pimax effectively recommends that if you have a 4090 or a 5090, this headset might be for you. If you have like a more mid-range computer or GPU overall, then you'll probably be maybe better suited for the Pimax Crystal Light. What I can say is for like someone with a computer like mine, it is possible to run the Crystal Super and have acceptable performance and good graphics. But keep in mind, again, that if you have something like mine or even lower specs, that it could potentially be a struggle to kind of have like a reasonable expectation. But nevertheless, iRacing and VR, maybe it's just because it's perhaps more just because I've been in the VR sphere for close to a year now, but it seems really pretty straightforward setting up VR in iRacing. Of course, there's a lot of wonderful people in the forums that can provide you info on the iRacing forum and get you started there, but the Pimax website also has a guide. In particular with iRacing, I used to say like Automolista 2 was like the most intuitive in terms of setting up a VR headset, but to me it now feels like iRacing feels like the easiest of any sim that I've ever done, and especially just getting good performance right away. There's two particular features that for a while now have been natively supported in iRacing, and those include multi-view projection and fixed foveated rendering. Prior to its introduction in iRacing, you would have to use the OpenXR toolkit to do the foveated rendering of, changing the resolution on the outer edges of effectively your screen in front of you in VR. So it'd be more blurry compared to the center because, when you're in the headset, what's most important is to be like what's most visible in front of you is like directly in front of your eyes and not in your peripheral. With iRacing now supporting this natively, FFR, the GPU load is going to be dramatically reduced by using it in the game. Now, keep in mind, this guide in particular is for the crystal lights, so there's probably some things you're going to have to change or perhaps have slightly lower settings, but generally this is a pretty good starting point still. And these are the settings that I use. Once your Crystal Super is connected, you're going to set your refresh rate in the Pimax Play app to 90 Hz. The article on Pimax's website notes that in the past, because there was no native support of MVP or FFR, they usually had to use 72 Hz, but now 90 Hz is a possibility. For render quality, they suggest 0.75. Now, if you have a really good computer, then this is probably something you can do in the Crystal Super. If you have a computer more similar to mine, I'm finding that this is probably not something that's possible, so I am setting it lower to around 0.65. The article notes that you should only have it at 1 if you have something like an RTX 5090. In the Pimax Play app, you will need to make sure that dynamic foveated rendering is turned off, so that means not having quad views on and not having Pimax central priority rendering on. Again, these are turned off because we'll handle this in iRacing. This guide also presumes that you'll be using Pimax OpenXR, so if you're using something else, I can help you there. This is only focused on OpenXR. Generally, the preference in iRacing, and what I understand that most people use, is OpenXR. The article mentions here that if you have OpenXR toolkit like enabled for iRacing, you can still keep that. Like there's still tools part of it you can use. It can tell you the frame rate, your CPU and GPU headroom, but you should not be using the foveated rendering or reprojection. Again, the reason is because we're doing this natively. In the graphics settings in iRacing, your resolution will be 1024 by 720 or something to that effect. You're going to run the game into windowed mode, and it's going to just basically be a little square because it's just a mirror display. It does not matter in terms of like what you see project onto your VR headset. This just reduces overhead and makes a generally smoother experience. You will also need to make sure to switch from SPS to MVP or multi-view projection, and this gives you a really good performance boost. After you enable this, it allows you to enable iRacing's own FFR system that's enabled within the game. Once you select these things, you'll have to make sure you restart the game. Once you've got back in the sim, we're going to head to the display options and graphics options, and you're going to set basically most of the presets and details at low. One of the only settings that won't be low is cars. One particular setting that's kind of up to you is event objects. Now, I like to have those on because I like being able to see the grandstands, like the tracks that I'm at. That is a performance hindrance, so if you're kind of struggling for frames, maybe perhaps consider turning that off or to low. Anti-aliasing, you'll want to set at MSAA times 4. You'll want shadow maps on, the basic ones only. If you have more detailed shadows, then that is an absolute FPS killer. So you also want to turn off object self-shadowing, dynamic shadows, and night shadows all to off. You'll want to set shader quality to high, and you'll only want to use a setting higher than that if you have like an RTX 5080 or 5090 or something to that effect. I have all the mirrors off except the virtual mirror. In particular, if I'm driving with other cars, that is a massive hindrance because I already have one virtual mirror. I don't need the other cockpit mirrors. You will lose a lot of frames if those are on. Other settings that the article recommends is 2048 car textures on, sharpening off, headlights and mirrors, low detail, SSR off, and video memory swap on. Now, after doing all this, you're going to have to do a lot of guessing and checking and doing a lot of testing. You want to make sure you're not testing alone, right? Like if you're testing alone, this guy got me to 90 frames per second, and it's wonderful driving in a test session, super smooth, but you probably want to race with other people. So I would make sure to hop into practice sessions or do some AI racing and kind of tweak it from there to see what settings in particular you need to use. The most important setting in terms of your performance will be iRacing's internal foveated rendering. You have two different settings to pick from. You have the percentage resolution to keep, which means the percent of the full resolution to render in the areas of the screen in the periphery outside of the higher resolution region. Higher percentage values will result in decreased frame rate performance. And then you have the inset size percentage, which controls the size of the area of the screen that is considered the focus of your gaze in terms of the percent of the full resolution size of your display. Higher percentage values will result in decreased frame rate performance. So if you're struggling for frame rate, this basically means that in terms of the second value, you will probably have to decrease that. Easiest way to think of this is, again, if you hold up your hand to your eye, right? And if you're to open and close, that is the setting you are changing. Obviously, you see outside the peripheral of this kind of telescope in a way. It just becomes slightly lesser resolution. It's not ideal. Again, in a perfect world, we'd have computers and headsets where we wouldn't have to do this, but that is kind of like the compromise you have to take with VR. Now, again, what's great with iRacing is, of course, it supports eye tracking that the Crystal Super offers. So the blue square here is where my eyes are looking. So I know it looks like I'm just staring at the rev lights or the dash, but I promise I'm actually looking up the road. For whatever reason, the sim thinks I'm just looking at the dash. But in terms of your foveated rendering, where your eyes look, that is where, in effect, the telescope effect goes. So you're looking down the center, wherever your eyes are, and that is a clear resolution, while the peripheral, your peripheral vision of this like kind of telescope effect, it is not as high resolution because you set that for performance. Again, not staring at the dash. For whatever reason, it thinks I am. But you're going to really see through this corner here how beneficial it could be. So my eyes now actually represent where I'm looking. I'm really kind of looking through the corner and then down the straightaway towards the start-finish line to finish my lap. It's clearly a much more natural effect. Like I don't have to like crane my head through corners just so I can see like the clearest picture. I look like, again, on in my headset, and that is where the picture will be visually clear. Because basically I want you to imagine like you're looking through an Apex, just your eyes, on a headset that doesn't offer eye tracking. In effect, like half the Apexes could be pixelated in theory, although it's not quite, it doesn't quite get that bad, because usually you can set a pretty decent size circle that remains high resolution while the outside edges remain a lower resolution. Overall, I want to talk about some of the downsides of this, and we did talk about one, and that is the price. This is a steep investment. You have to be pretty certain that you're going to love VR when you buy something like this, right? Like I said, I'm very much privileged that Pimax lets me review these headsets, lets me try out these headsets so I can talk to you about them. As a consumer, that's quite a lot of money, right? And you're going to have a pretty good computer to use this with. If you have a computer like mine, it is useful. But again, you got to make sure to kind of set your expectations reasonably. For example, I'm really hyper-focused on trying to hit 90 hertz. So having 90 frames per second, which for a computer like mine with iRacing, that's probably pretty tough. And my tests and my B-roll here, I didn't hit 90 frames the whole time. My overall experience was still smooth and it was playable, but I wish I could have the frame rate a little bit higher. With that being said, I don't think I ever dropped below 72 hertz, which does mean if I set it to 72 hertz, then in theory, I won't have the higher refresh rate, right? But I will have smooth gameplay, and that's what counts the most in VR. The next thing is, and this is, again, just kind of a more general warning, is that with any VR headset, again, be prepared to fiddle quite around with settings. Again, when I started with the Crystal Light last year, I didn't know what I was doing, man. It took me a while to kind of fully understand what all the settings meant, getting things just right. And the Pimax Play app, I would say, is pretty straightforward once you know how to use it, but it can still be confusing, especially when you first start out. I have to say overall, though, and again, I understand it's very easy for me to say this, but the Crystal Super is really cool. Could I live with the Crystal Light? Honestly, yeah, I think I could. The Crystal Light, again, for its price point and the resolution, I was quite happy with this as well. But having tried both, knowing as a consumer, if I had the money and I had the computer, if I wanted to make sure my equipment would last and not become obsolete in some sense, the Crystal Super is something that can do it for you. I want to conclude by saying thank you once again to Pimax for lending this to me, and I've had a lot of fun using it, and I am a triple screen guy. Like, I always will be. I'll still love using VR, but I will be using triples a lot just because, I stream, I make content, and it's generally easier to make content, with screens. But VR is something that I very much enjoy, and I have fun using it. That's the most important thing. I have fun using it, right? When I talked about like my triples versus the VR, like which is faster, right? Like ultimately at the end of the day, you should pick what you have the most fun in, because what I found in that video was generally my pace didn't really change. It didn't really matter which of the two I used. I was still the same pace roughly. VR is something I can just have fun in, and a lot of the B-roll as part of this video were some races I did in hosted in iRacing, right? So unofficial races, just having fun, good, hard, clean racing, having fun with your friends, right? It's just not the same if I were to do that in triples, right? Like VR presents a completely different experience of like, physically seeing, a car about to dive bomb you, another Volkswagen Jet about to dive bomb you, for example, right? And kind of a weird hosted race, but like there's a charm to that and using VR. And triples you really don't get, in my opinion. As fun as triples are, I love my triples. It's just not the same. And of course, I want to thank you for watching. And I understand maybe potentially some new viewers looking for information about this. And I'm happy to provide any resources. I'm going to put a lot of resources in the video description and the comments down below, in particular, like how to set up OpenXR, how to, again, the graphics settings I use that Pimax is a guide for, and lots of other resources as well. So the final verdict, can I recommend this headset? Once again, if you have the budget, if you have the computer, I don't think you can go wrong with this. But again, depending on your specs, manage your expectations. Thank you so much for watching. I hear my cat Lily. I have to go. Hello.